Women were being shaved bald in the village. Then cowboys came with gold and made their choice. The wind was dry that morning, scratching across the earth like a blade. Dust curled off the path into the sky, and smoke rose from the center of the village, not from a hearth, but from burning cloth and hair. Somewhere near the square, a girl screamed. Mira didn't flinch. She stood behind the small shutter of her cabin, eyes watching through the crack as the men dragged another woman forward. It was Ida this time, widow, 42, kept to herself since the frost took her youngest. The town had no trial, no priests, no lawyers anymore, just suspicion and a council of bitter men with sun-scarred faces who called themselves the protectors. One of them held a rusty blade, the other a bucket of cold water. Ida's sobs echoed down the dirt alleyways like church bells in hell. And then silence. The rasp of steel cutting through hair made Mira's stomach twist. Her fingers gripped the windowsill. In the back room, her younger sister Elia whimpered, covering her ears. "They'll come for us," Elia said. She was only 16, thin and pale, with a feverish kind of beauty that Mira hated because it drew eyes. Mira turned from the window and closed the shutters slowly. "They won't," she replied, though the words tasted like ash. "But we're alone now," Elia said. "We've always been alone." Mira crossed the room and knelt beside her sister. She brushed dark strands from Elia's face, trying not to show how much her hands trembled. "And we'll survive, like always." Elia's eyes locked on hers, searching for something solid in her voice. "They said she was a traitor, that she gave her bread to a traveler. A man they didn't recognize," Mira said flatly. "That's all it takes." The door creaked outside. They froze. Footsteps, muffled in the dust, passed by. Mira stayed crouched until the sound was gone. She breathed again. Ever since the war ended, the world had turned in strange directions. The old rules didn't apply. Men came back broken, some not at all. Women were left to fill graves and scavenge for justice in barren towns like Black Hollow, where memory had been replaced with rumor, and authority was whatever a man could hold in his hand. Mira's husband, Jonas, had once tried to build a better future here, a prospector with a map sewn into his saddle and hope in his spine. He'd left 2 winters ago with a small crew heading into the Redstone Hills, chasing whispers of gold washed down from the Rockies. He never came back. Neither did the others. They said the hills swallowed them. Mira never believed that. She believed in choices, in violence wrapped in excuses. And she knew exactly why some people disappeared. The bell rang from the square 3 short clangs. Ida's punishment was over. Now she was marked. No man would speak to her. No woman would share her home. In a place where survival depended on belonging, being cast out was the cruelest death. Mira rose, her legs stiff. She needed to check the traps by the creek. If she didn't bring back meat, there'd be questions. Questions led to suspicion. "Stay here," she said to Elia. "No, please. I'll be back before the sun sets. Keep the door barred." Outside, the village looked smaller than it had before. The buildings leaned in on themselves, tired of standing. Smoke curled from only 3 chimneys. The rest had gone cold. Mira passed the square, without looking at the post, though she heard the murmurs, the sobbing. People watched her, as they always did, eyes darting away when she met them. She knew they talked, that she still wore her hair down, that she had a rifle hidden in her wall, that she didn't cry when Jonas didn't return. Let them talk. Down by the creek, the traps had sprung. 1 rabbit, 1 empty snare. Enough for a day. She paused at the edge of the water. On the opposite side, framed against the slope of the hills, she saw something dust at first, just a smear on the horizon. Then a shape, several 5 riders, maybe 6. They weren't locals. Mira knew every face in Black Hollow. These men moved differently, upright, deliberate. They rode horses with unbranded hides and saddles, worn from long travel. One of them wore a red scarf, bright as blood against the sun. Mira crouched and backed into the underbrush. She waited until they passed down the ridge, disappearing behind the northern hill. Then she ran back in the village. The protectors had gathered. Eldon Graves, the self-appointed leader, stood at the center of the square. He was tall and sharp-featured, a man who looked like he'd been carved from bone. His voice cut through the crowd. Riders coming from the north, not traitors. Could be deserters, could be worse. Mira melted into the edge of the gathering, clutching her sack tighter. Elia had come despite orders. She stood in the shadows of the tannery, watching with wide, frightened eyes. "Do they have weapons?" someone asked. "They have horses." "That's enough," Eldon growled. "We keep 'em outside the gate. They want food, they pay. They want to stay, they leave their steel at the post." Murmurs of agreement followed, but unease hung in the air like smoke. Mira caught Elia's eye. A small nod passed between them. A warning dot at sundown, the riders arrived. They came slow, without fanfare. The lead man dismounted first. Broad-shouldered, with a worn hat pulled low and a thick beard. Dust coated his coat like a second skin. He said nothing at first, just looked at the crowd with unreadable eyes. Then he stepped forward and reached into his SATCHEL.gold, raw flakes of it in a small glass jar. He held it up. It glittered in the dying sun. "No trouble," he said. His voice was calm, low. "Just need a place to sleep and water for the horses." Eldon stepped forward. "What's your name?" "Cullen Tate. You come alone?" Cullen tilted his head toward his companions. A tall black man with a scar across his cheek. A younger boy with sunburnt hands. Another, wiry and twitchy. And one man at the back who didn't remove his hat, silent as stone. "That's all of us," Cullen said. "We don't mean harm. We can pay." Eldon looked at the gold. Then at the men. "Leave your guns in the stable." "No." The refusal hung in the air like thunder. "We ain't here to be judged," Cullen continued. "We'll stay one night. If you don't want the gold, we move on." There was a long silence. Then quietly, Eldon nodded. One night, they passed through the village with eyes on them. Children peeked from doorways. Women turned their faces. The men stayed rigid. Cullen stopped briefly near Mira. Their eyes met. Just a flicker. She looked away. Later, in the dark, Elia whispered, "Do you think they're dangerous?" "Yes," Mira replied. "But they might help us. No one helps for free." "What if they're like Jonas?" Mira didn't answer. She didn't want to crush the spark in Elia's voice, but Jonas had been different. He had believed in rebuilding, in farming soil that refused to give. These men smelled of smoke and gun smoke. The next morning, someone had vandalized a post near the square. On it, a name had been carved. Elia. A warning. A threat. Mira stared at the letters for a long time before scraping them off. The town was closing in. The choices were narrowing. And when choices vanish, people grow cruel. That night, thunder rolled on the horizon. Not rain, just the sound. Dry storms that mocked the thirsty land. From the edge of the fields, Mira saw the riders again. Cullen standing watch by the fence. Not sleeping. Not talking. He turned slightly, as if he sensed her. Then he looked away. The village was a tinderbox. And someone had just brought fire. Tomorrow would burn. She felt it in her bones. And still, against every instinct she had, Mira hoped. Not for gold. Not even for safety, but for something to change. The horses kicked up dust as they moved through the center of Black Hollow, their hooves slow and deliberate, like they were measuring every heartbeat in the air. The people kept their distance. Children peered from behind corners. Men watched. From porches with their hands near axes or hammers or guns they hadn't fired since the war. The women didn't come outside at all, except Mira. She stood near the well with her hair tied back, arms folded and eyes like knives. She wasn't curious, she was calculating. The leader of the riders, Cullen Tate, scanned the town without. Seeming to. His jaw was tight, his eyes slow and sharp. Not the kind of man who needed to raise his voice. Beside him was his second Malcolm, heavy-set, quiet, with arms that looked built to break trees. The younger boy behind them couldn't have been more than 19, his face smudged with travel dirt, and eyes wide with unspent violence. The wiry man with twitching fingers walked slightly behind them, scanning too fast to be calm. And then there was the fifth, wrapped in a cloak, face shadowed, utterly still. No one could say for sure if he was watching anything or everything. They stopped in front of Eldon Graves, who leaned against the post of the town's only saloon with two of his men flanking him. Eldon didn't speak right away. He didn't like being challenged, and Cullen's silence was a challenge in itself. "You got water," Eldon said eventually. "One night, that's it. We'll not have lawlessness in this town." Cullen raised an eyebrow. "You got law here?" Eldon's jaw tightened. "We've got order. Looks like fear to me." Tension spiked like flint on steel. For a second, no one breathed. Then Cullen reached into his saddlebag and pulled out another jar of gold flakes. He tossed it toward Eldon's feet. "We're not here to fight, but we don't sleep in the dirt either. You let us stay, we stay out of your way. Long enough to water the horses and tend our wounds." Eldon didn't pick up the jar. He let one of his men do it, then jerked his chin toward the stables. "One night," he repeated. "They moved through the village like shadows, drawing glances. Like thunder draws whispers." Mira watched them all, but it was Cullen's eyes that lingered on her. Not leering, not curious. Just searching. As if he already knew she was more than she appeared. Later that afternoon, Mira was in the market, trading dried rabbit for a wedge of salt. Elia walked beside her, nervous, clumsy. The ground had turned to powder under the heat, and every step sent up small clouds. They turned a corner and nearly ran straight into Cullen. Elia gasped and stepped back. Cullen didn't move. "Didn't mean to startle," he said. Voice, like worn leather, Mira studied him. Up close, his coat was torn, stitched many times over. A scar ran down the side of his neck, old and pale. His eyes didn't blink often. "You're not from here," Mira said. "No one worth a damn is." That got the ghost of a smile from her. Elia tugged her sleeve, but Mira ignored it. "You're staying long?" she asked. "Long enough to bury the dead and find the living." Mira frowned. "You lose someone?" He didn't answer. Just looked past her toward the hills, where the Redstone Trail began. "Have a good evening," Mira said, voice cool, but she felt the chill he left behind when he walked away. By sundown, things had shifted. The villagers whispered about the gold, about what the men might be. Some said bounty hunters. Others said mercenaries, chasing some ex-Confederate gold lost in the mountains. Mira didn't care about the rumors, but she cared about Eldon. And she saw him that night, drinking heavily with his men outside the saloon, shooting glances at the stable where the Cowboys rested. A storm was building, but it wouldn't bring rain. When the fight broke out, it happened fast. One of Eldon's men, a short, drunk fool named Rusk, took a swing at the younger cowboy, accusing him of eyeing his daughter. The boy didn't speak, just blocked the blow and stepped back. But Rusk lunged again. Malcolm stepped between them, like a wall, and knocked Rusk down with one strike. Rusk didn't get up. Eldon exploded, drawing his revolver. But Cullen was already there, gun out, finger on the trigger, calm as dusk. "He's breathing," Cullen said. "But next time, he won't be." For a long moment, everyone waited. Eldon's finger twitched, but then he holstered his weapon. The message was clear. Cullen didn't want trouble. But he wasn't afraid of it either. The next morning, Mira found him alone by the creek, away from the village. He was cleaning his rifle, eyes on the water. "You kill a lot of men?" she asked. "Only the ones who try to kill me first." "I heard you buried your friend last night." He nodded once. Boy didn't listen. "Got sick back in Jackson. Rode anyway. Heat got him. I'm sorry." "You know about loss," he said, not a question. "My husband," she replied. "He followed the trail north, looking for gold. He never came back." Cullen didn't speak for a moment. Then he pulled something from his coat, a scrap of deer hide, burned on the edges. Etched into it was a faint map. He unfolded it carefully and pointed to a narrow gulch near the Redstone Hills. "Seen this before?" he asked. Mira's throat tightened. She had. Jonas had shown it to her once. Only once. It matched the sketch she'd drawn in the back of his journal, now buried behind the cabin in a rusted tin box. "Maybe," she lied. "If I find what I'm looking for," Cullen said, "I'll be gone." "You think it's still there?" "I think men killed for it. And when that happens, it usually means it's real." Mira watched him. There was no greed in his voice, just resolve. And something else lost back at the cabin. Elia met her with wide eyes. "They wrote my name again, on the post." Mira's stomach sank. "When?" "This morning. I scraped it off." "Did anyone see you?" "I don't know." Mira closed her eyes. The walls were closing in. The town was looking for someone else to punish, and Elia was young, beautiful, different. They'd never needed more reason than that night. Mira left the cabin and found Cullen by the tree line. The stars were beginning to burn overhead. "I know where it is," she said. He didn't ask what she meant. Just nodded once. "Why help me?" she asked. "Because I buried a daughter last winter," he said. "She died with no name on her grave. I wasn't there." Mira swallowed hard. "You think there's still gold?" "I think there's enough for you to start over somewhere. No one carves names in wood." She nodded. "We go tomorrow, before dawn." Behind them, a soft rustle. They turned. In the shadows stood the fifth cowboy, the silent one. Cullen raised his chin. "That's Tokala. He's Lakota. Doesn't speak English, but he sees things." Tokala stepped forward slowly, his face weathered and unreadable. He stared at Mira for a long time, then offered a small nod. Not approval, not trust, just acknowledgement. "Will he come with us?" Mira asked. "He always does." Cullen said in the distance. Thunder rolled over the hills. The next day would bring blood. She could feel it. But for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. She had made a decision. That night, as the village slept, someone crept to the post and carved another name. Mira. Eldan had made his move, and the fire had found its fuse. The wind carried a strange stillness that morning, like even the trees were holding their breath. Mira woke before first light, a knot tightening in her stomach as she laced her boots and reached for the worn satchel beneath the floorboards. Inside were two things, a rusted revolver and a folded piece of parchment, the journal page, the sketch Jonas had made before he vanished. The path to the gulch. Elia stirred in her cot, murmuring something in sleep. Mira brushed a strand of hair from her sister's face, then bent low, pressing her lips gently to her forehead. "Stay inside, no matter what happens." The girl blinked up at her, already frightened. "You're going, aren't you?" Mira nodded. "Is Cullen going too?" "He's meeting me at the tree line." Elia sat up, clutched Mira's hand. They'll. No. Eldon, he's watching. He knows about us. I know. Mira looked toward the door. That's why we can't wait. Outside, the sun hadn't yet risen, but the air was alive with tension. Somewhere down the path, a shovel struck dry earth. Mira imagined Eldon's men already digging another shamepost. When she reached the edge of the woods, Cullen and Tokala were already there. Cullen's rifle was slung across his back, his coat buttoned high. Tokala said nothing, only nodded once, eyes flicking toward the town like a hawk. Mira handed Cullen the parchment without a word. He studied it briefly and nodded. Double quotes, we go fast, he said. We make it back by sundown. If we don't? Mira asked. He didn't answer. The trail wound steeply into the foothills, narrow, and sun-cracked, flanked by brush and stone. Tokala moved ahead without effort, his footfalls silent, his body blending with the land. Cullen walked beside Mira, his silence a shield. Not cold, not warm, just present. They climbed for 2 hours. Before Cullen finally broke the silence. You ever think of leaving? All the time. Then why haven't you? Elia. He nodded. I had someone once. My girl. We were going to go west, build something near the coast. Then yellow fever came. Took her in 2 days. Mira said nothing. Pain was best left quiet. Around midday, Tokala raised a hand and crouched low. They followed his gaze. On a distant ridge, figures moved riders. 4 of them. Too far to see faces, but the shapes were unmistakable. Eldon's men. He followed us, Mira whispered. Cullen's eyes narrowed. He doesn't want the gold. He wants to make sure no one else has it. Tokala signed something with his hand. Mira didn't understand, but Cullen did. There's a way around. It'll cost us an hour. We don't have an hour, Mira said. We'll make it. They circled low, through thick scrub, brushing past thorns and shale. When they emerged, sweat-soaked and breathing hard, the sun was already tipping past its peak. They reached a narrow gorge cut deep into the hillside. Dead trees loomed like bones, and the wind whistled through them. This is it, Cullen said. The map had marked it precisely. A rock shaped like a bent tooth. A tree split at the trunk. Beneath it, soft earth. They started digging. Each shovel of dirt was heavier than the last, as if the ground resisted being disturbed. Mira's hands blistered fast, but she didn't stop. She thought of Jonas, of his boots walking this same path, digging in this same place. She thought of Elia's name carved into that post, of the look in Eldon's eyes when she refused to bow her head. Then Cullen's shovel hit wood. A crate, rotted on one side, but intact. Inside, cloth sacks heavy with dust and glint. Cullen opened one. Gold, raw, unshaped. Enough to start lives. Or end them. We have to go, Cullen said. No, but it was too late. Gunfire split the air. The first bullet struck a stone near Tokala's foot, throwing dust into the air. The second took Malcolm, who had followed them unseen, square in the chest. He collapsed with a grunt and didn't move again. Mira dropped to the ground, heart pounding. Cullen spun and fired. A man screamed in the distance. Tokala vanished into the trees like a shadow. Cullen grabbed Mira's hand. Run! They sprinted down the trail, gold sacks left behind. Behind them, shouts echoed and boots pounded the dirt. Mira's lungs burned. She stumbled once, nearly falling, but Cullen yanked her upright without slowing. At a bend in the trail, Tokala reappeared. Blood streaked down one arm. He said nothing, just nodded toward a split in the path. This way, Cullen said. They broke through brush, down a ravine slick with mud and old leaves. Cullen covered their tracks as best he could. Gunfire came again closer now. Then a scream. Tokala had circled back. Bought them time. When they finally stopped, Mira collapsed against a tree. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Cullen knelt beside her, face grim. "He won't make it out," Mira whispered. Cullen shook his head. He knew that. She looked at him, really looked. Beneath the dust, beneath the grim lines carved into his face, there was something broken, something loyal. He hadn't just come for gold. He'd come for something he'd lost. And maybe, just maybe, to save someone else from the same fate. "We have to go back," she said. He looked surprised. "Elia," she said. They moved fast, taking a lower trail back into Black Hollow, avoiding the ridges. When they arrived, dusk had just begun to paint the town in blood-colored light. The square was full. Eldon stood at the post, a knife in one hand, Elia held tight in the other. Her face was streaked with dirt and fear. "This girl," he announced, "is a danger to our peace. She harbors traitors, lies to protect thieves. And in this village, we don't let rot spread." Mira didn't hesitate. She walked into the square, rifle lowered but steady. "Let her go." Eldon turned, grinning like a dog. "Or what?" "I'll put a bullet in your skull and bury you where you stand." People gasped. Women pulled children back. The protectors reached for their weapons. Cullen stepped forward then, calm and slow. He dropped a cloth sack onto the ground. Gold spilled out. "I'll trade you," he said. "One sack for her freedom. No more names on your post. No more blades." Eldon's eyes widened. For a moment, greed warred with pride. Then he nodded. He let Elia go. She ran to Mira, collapsing in her arms, sobbing. Cullen knelt, whispered to Mira, "There's more up there." "You know where?" Mira stared at him. "You're not taking it?" He shook his head. "I've carried enough weight." Mira looked at the crowd. Eldon stood there, triumphant, cradling the sack like it was a child. But the people weren't cheering. They were watching, quiet, uneasy. That night, Mira took Elia to the cabin and packed what little they had. The hills still held gold, but she wanted none of it. She buried the journal again, deeper this time, and scattered stones over it. In the morning, Cullen stood at the edge of the village, horse saddled. He handed her a single coin. "Start fresh," he said. She nodded. "You going east?" "West, to see the ocean." Tokala hadn't returned. And no one asked. Mira and Elia walked away from Black Hollow with dust on their boots and no plans except to move forward. Behind them, the wind picked up. It carried no screams, no smoke, just silence. By the next week, another woman's name was on the post, but it wasn't Mira's, and it wasn't Elia's. Sometimes survival is not about winning. It's about leaving before the fire burns again. And for once, Mira had made the right choice.